Happy Wednesday and welcome to the Manatee Chamber of Commerce Headliners Luncheon. My name is Jackie Dzelski, the President and CEO here at the Chamber, and we're thrilled that you joined us today. My guess is we have a full room because of the topic, right? Hiring and retention of employees. I'll tell you, we're in the middle of our annual membership survey, so if you haven't yet gone online using the link you've received a few times in your email, please take a couple minutes to do that, but no surprise, currently when asking our members what are the biggest challenges or barriers to growth and success you are experiencing within your business, talent is, and finding the right people to fill roles within organizations is one of the biggest challenges, and so we're thrilled to bring you this programming today. So what I'd like you to do is, if you don't mind pausing for lunch, to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll continue with the rest of our agenda. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much, and you may be seated, and please continue to enjoy your lunch. I would like to recognize Commissioner Jason Bearden from Manatee County Commission, who has joined us here today. Thank you so much for being here. And I'd also like to recognize our 2023 Chairman of the Board for the Manatee Chamber, Jeff Podobnik, with the Pittsburgh Pirates and Bradenton Marauders. So thank you all so much for being here. Up on the screen, you'll see logos for our annual Headliners sponsors. We want to thank these organizations for making this monthly programming possible, and those sponsors are Florida Power and Light, Manatee Memorial Hospital, the Mosaic Company, and the Realtors Association of Sarasota and Manatee. So thank you all for being here and for supporting this type of programming for our membership. Additionally, you'll see on screen the logos for our Platinum investors, which are organizations that step up and invest well beyond their annual dues to support the growth of member benefits and programming and initiatives for the Manatee Chamber. And those organizations are Brown & Sons Funeral Homes, Carr, Riggs & Ingram, the City of Bradenton, IMG Academy, Manatee County Government, Manatee Memorial Hospital, MCR Health Services, All Care Options, the Mosaic Company, NDC Commercial Real Estate, NDC Construction Company, the Pittsburgh Pirates, Bradenton Marauders, Raymond James Wealth Management, Bruce Body, Sarasota Bradenton International Airport, Seaport Manatee, and South State Bank. So with that, let's give a round of applause for everyone that we've recognized. And as we do that, I see that City of Bradenton Councilman Josh Kramer has joined us as well. Councilman, thank you for being here and for the city's investment and partnership with the Chamber. I say often I have the very best job in the world because it brings me into the orbit of people just like you. At the Chamber, we get to work with the very best people who are growing and supporting businesses, who are working in nonprofits, who are leading policy decisions to positively impact our community within local government, and smart and innovative thinkers. So again, people just like you. I also get to experience a lot of aha moments as I learn from the amazing people that come into my orbit at the Chamber. And a recent aha has stuck with me as I was talking with today's speaker at our Headliners lunch. And the aha moment was really posed as a question as we were talking about programming for today. And he posed the question, what if every employer approached their employees' experience with the same focus and fervor and resources as they approached preparing for their customer experience? There's often lots of marketing and strategy discussion around customer experience, but what about your employee experience? And it will surprise, as I said, no one in the room that is something we all are focused on within our organizations. But what can we learn from the innovative practices of other organizations and from the leadership role that CareerSource Suncoast plays when it comes to workforce development? I know I, for one, will be taking many notes today. I now want to introduce Dev Iglesias, Area Manager for Florida Power and Light's Sarasota Manatee Market, which encompasses some 640,000 commercial and residential accounts across 5 counties. FPL is an annual headliner sponsor, as I mentioned earlier, and a silver level investor in our chamber. Dev was recently profiled in the Business Observer, and there was one section in that article that particularly stood out for me and perhaps is germane to our topic at hand today as well. And the quote from the Observer article was this: Iglesias utilizes several key principles in change management. For one, she encourages the team to think differently on problems. And her quote was, just because someone hasn't done something, she said, doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at it. And I think that's very good food for thought for today as we prepare to welcome Dev to the podium to introduce our speaker. So please continue enjoying your lunch. And Dev, we would love for you to join us at the podium to introduce Joshua Matlock.
When she am I on? Can you hear me? When she texted me to ask if I would introduce Josh today, she did not mention that she was going to do the full background, so thank you for that, but unnecessary. So yes, everyone, my name is Devaney. For those who don't know me, I go by Dev, but I am your local Florida Power and Light representative here, so any issues you have, you can definitely call on me. I have the honor and privilege today of introducing today's headliner, Joshua Matlock. Josh serves as president and CEO of CareerSource Suncoast, a private nonprofit organization serving Manatee and Sarasota counties by helping businesses grow and communities prosper with proven solutions for talent, recruitment, and development. After more than a decade in workforce development, Josh knows the importance of investments in people and partnerships for creating conditions where people can do their best work. It's those businesses and communities that value people more who will thrive most in the future. Josh chairs Manatee Technical College's Board of Governors, serves as chair of the board for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Manatee County, is president of the Leadership Manatee Alumni Association, vice president of Florida Workforce Development Association, and serves on the boards of directors for Manatee Chamber of Commerce and Bradenton Area EDC. He holds a BS in Criminal Justice, a Master's in Political Science, a Master's in Public Administration from Midwestern State University. Please help me welcome Josh Matlock.
There you go. Thanks. All right. Thanks, Dev, for that introduction. Appreciate that. And thank you all for coming out today. You know, we're here to, first of all, I'm grateful that you came to learn more about strategies to improve our talent pipeline and strategies for strengthening our employee experiences. And so, many of you all are probably out here wondering, have this question on your minds, how did we get into the labor market situation that we find ourselves today? And the answer is 2 ways. There's gradually and then suddenly. The gradually part happened here in May 2021. And so in May 2021, we had this thing called the beginning of the Great Resignation. And so what we experienced was a confluence of demographic and labor market trends that together, coupled with a pandemic, has ushered in a widespread employee movement, also known as the Great Reshuffle. And so you can see the emergence of the problem here on this job openings to unemployed ratio graph. I'll circle the section there where the problem starts to happen. And so as you can see, in 2016 is where the problem gradually starts. And then by the time we hit 2021, it's suddenly upon us. And so what you are looking at is this is the number of job openings, so 2 job openings to unemployed persons, right? This is the unemployed persons. Here we're rocking along about, 0.4 unemployed people per job openings. And then you get up here and you're looking at a 2-to-1 ratio. So 2 job openings for 1 unemployed person. So really it's worse than it first appears at first glance. And because we're not looking at perfect matches, 2 jobs to 1 person, those aren't perfect matches. When you consider the mismatches, you really have a situation where the disparities between job openings and the available labor are greater than that, right? So we have 2 things that are really driving this and primarily responsible for what we're experiencing. And those 2 things are, number 1, a demographic trend. So the first demographic trend has been years in the making, and it's boomer retirements followed by a lower than replacement rate of births, which has resulted in a shrinking labor pool, okay? And so you see here in 2009, this shaded area of baby boomers, they're coming along. And this red line here that's the retirement age. These are retired people. And then we switch over to 2022, and you can see here that in the shaded area, you have the largest generation ever that has already halfway through retirement age, right? So you can see how the retired folks, number of folks here, how much that increases, and we're already halfway through. And so about that same time, it kind of gives us an indication of what we're seeing here. So about that same time, we're seeing a growing gap between job openings and unemployed persons. To exacerbate this situation, we have a declining labor force participation rate. It's the second trend responsible for the tight labor market that we're in. And if you look at the labor force participation rate, it's been declining since its peak in 2000 at 67%. So in 2000, we're at 67% labor force participation rate. And then by the time the pandemic hits, we drop down to 60% labor force participation. And then pandemic's over, and we only bounce back to 62% labor force participation. And so this is a national perspective. So let's drill down to a more local perspective and take a look at Manatee County. And so as we look at Manatee County, it really doesn't get better. It kind of gets worse. So most recent data has Manatee County hovering at around 53% labor force participation. That's 9% below the national average, or the national rate. And the primary driver can be seen here. It's our population is older, right? So we're below the national average on the number of millennials for an area this size. So you can see the national average here. This is where we are for Manatee County. Additionally, our retirement risk is high here. That's 179,000 workers 55 or older that will be retiring soon. That puts us above the national average. And so we're experiencing this demographic trend. There's the national average, and here's where we are. So we're experiencing this demographic trend, and then we add on to it record low unemployment rates. And since January, we've ranged anywhere between 2.3 and 3.2% unemployment. And with this level of unemployment, we're finding that most everyone who can work or wants to work is working, right? And so the question that we're left with is, with this challenge that we face, what's the best way we can position our companies to thrive in this particular labor market? And because the primary driver of this market, this top market, is demographic in nature, it's not going to be something that is short-lived. This is going to be with us for a while, at least 20 years, right? Because that's how long it takes for you to develop the next generation of workers, essentially. So this is a lasting challenge. So for us, the challenge calls for us to break from past paradigms and practices. Practices that served us well in the past will no longer serve us well in the future. And so what we need is a paradigm founded on developing exceptional employee experiences. Research shows organizations that provide superior employee experiences generate 25% higher profits, twice the level of innovation and customer satisfaction, and they get and retain the most talented people. A first step on this path to developing exceptional employee experiences is to focus on discovering what employees want. It's a good first step, right? According to Gallup, the number one thing is pay and benefits. So since 2015, pay and benefits have risen in priority for workers from number 4, with 41% of employees citing it as very important, to number 1 now, with 64% of employees citing it as important. They're naming it as a critical factor in taking a new job. It was the most single reason employees left their job in 2022. According to ADP Research Institute survey of more than 32,000 workers, 83% expect a raise this year. Okay? And 8.3% is the average expected raise. 34% 34% expect an increase of 10% or more, right? So, as you can see, employees clearly say that this is something that's important to them. And the question that we need to be asking ourselves as employers is how competitive are our pay and benefits in today's market, okay? So next on the list of what employees want is meaning, purpose, and belonging. A Randstad Enterprise survey of 35,000 workers found that 77% feel a company's values and purpose are important when selecting an employer. Manpower Group recently published a report called What Workers Want to Thrive, and based on their surveying and research, they found that 70% of workers want to find meaning in their daily work, and that 75% of workers want to feel motivated by the work they do. And in fact, we have 64% who want their work to contribute positively to society. Okay? So the question that we have for ourselves, when we look at our companies and this idea of meaning, purpose, and belonging, we have to be asking ourselves, for our companies, what is our compelling story that conveys meaning, purpose, and belonging to our current employees and potential other future employees? That's something that we'll have to wrestle with. Next on the list of what employees want is flexibility. Also, according to that Manpower Group study, 93% of all people now see flexibility as an important to their working lives. Among parents, flexibility is the top demand. Choosing when they start and finish work is a key factor. And then for all people, 45% want to choose their start and end times for work. 35% want to choose where they work, whether it be workplace or home, based on their daily needs. And what about a 4-day work week, you may ask? 64% want to switch to a 4-day work week. In fact, 18%, almost 1/5 of workers, would work a 4-day work week for less pay to achieve better balance. Okay? So, in terms of satisfaction, the ADP Research Institute found that perhaps due to getting the best of both worlds, hybrid workers who spend part of their week at their workplace and part working from home are the most satisfied with the flexibility they have in their jobs. And so this is satisfaction with hours worked and location worked, right? Those who work solely on premise are the least happy with the amount of flexibility that they have, and remote-only workers are in the middle, okay? So that leaves us with the question, and this is one where as our company leaders, we have to say, given the constraints of the business we're in, our environment, based on those constraints, how can we reach our most flexible potential? You're not going to be as flexible as everybody else out there in the market, but how far can we take it and still make sure we're taking care of our business, right? So last on the list of what employees want is support. Employees want support. The ADP Research Institute discovered that, workers report expressing or experiencing stress on average of 10 times per month, and that 65% say that stress adversely affects their work. And 47% say that their work is suffering due to poor mental health. And according to a 2023 Workplace Mental Health Trends report, 67% of employees want their employer to provide mental health support. Yet keep in mind, mental health is but one element in a supportive company culture that employees have come to expect. In addition to mental health well-being, we should consider physical, emotional, and spiritual, as well as professional and career development types of support. In fact, a recent Conference Board survey found that 58% of workers are likely to leave their company if they don't receive professional development opportunities. Okay? So, again, ask ourselves, how can we become a more supportive culture in our company, right? And so what we do is we take, let's add it all together. We take the pay and benefits, meaning, purpose, and belonging. We add flexibility. We add support. And then what we are left with is our company and the job's employee value proposition, right? Our employee value proposition is the standard we set and aim to deliver through our companies. The way I like to think of the employee value proposition is if it were a mixing board, all right? And so you take a look at a mixing board where pay, meaning, flexibility, and support each represents a volume fader on that board. We should go through the exercise of adjusting the levels to indicate our place in the market for each of those. And then it would be a worthwhile exercise to take it a step further and do this for each job, because our employee value proposition could vary significantly from job to job in our companies. And so to broadly demonstrate how this works, let's run through a hypothetical scenario, okay? Let's imagine that we're all members of a company and we're having difficulty hiring and keeping widget makers, okay? You playing along on this? All right. So let's start with pay. What we did is we went to CareerSource Suncoast, and they have this cool labor market application that you could access if you would like. It's free. And we determined that based on this labor market application, our widget maker was about average on pay and benefits compared to the market, compared to local jobs like this, even statewide and national. We're about average, okay? So we marked it average. Next on meaning, purpose, and belonging, we discovered that, you know what, we've really never taken the time to develop a compelling narrative as to why the work we do in this company is meaningful. And more specifically, we've never really put together anything that shows the importance and contribution of the widget maker. And we don't really invest much time and resources fostering a sense of community and belonging with our employees. So we'll go ahead and rate ourselves low in this category. As for flexibility, the widget maker is a solely on-premise position. It's shift work, and at the moment, there's only one shift that we're hiring for because it happens to be the worst shift, and it's one that we always seem to have vacancies for. So we'll go ahead and rate ourselves low here as well. And then finally, support. You know, that's the last one here. We think that we're about average. We have tuition reimbursement program. We make our investments in training and development, especially when we're bringing on new equipment to get folks trained up on it. But, you know, we feel we're not going above and beyond what's offered by other companies. So we'll rate ourselves average in the middle on this. We put it all together, and this is our employee value proposition for the widget maker. And so the question we ask ourselves, is this a winning mix? We know it's not, right? We know this because of the difficulty we're having recruiting and retaining people for this position. So then what we need to do is begin the work necessary to make improvements across these 4 areas. And that work starts by understanding how we can use employee value propositions to create exceptional employee experiences. The employee value proposition is actually going to drive those employee experiences, and what we'll do is apply it to this 3 different experience contexts. So think of the experience in these 3 different contexts. So we have the candidate experience, we've got the onboarding experience, and then we have like the everyday employee experience. Got it? Let's start with the everyday employee experience. In fact, we'll start with pay and benefits. So on pay and benefits, when you start thinking about your everyday employee experience, are we competitive? Are we even in the game on pay and benefits? Remember, this is a thing we can adjust up and down. We may not can win on every mark, but we have to really maximize where we are in each of those. So on pay and benefits, we have to ask ourselves, what can get us competitive or close to competitive in this area? And the best way, reach out to CareerSource. We can run the labor market information for any of your jobs you have out there. We'll tell you really quick where you are in the market. And then also, what's your cadence for evaluating this? You know, is the only time you're doing this when you notice that you've had a mass exodus of employees, or are you being proactive about it? And so, you know, what you'll want to do is just remember that this is number 1 on the minds of what employees want, and then you'll need to be sure you're giving it the attention that it deserves. Next, on meaning, purpose, and belonging, the thing to ask yourself is, what are our compelling stories for our for our companies, for the jobs in our companies? These stories shape our company's culture, and they're very important. When we don't invest the time curating these stories that support what we aspire to be as a company, as an employer, that doesn't mean that there are no stories out there. You know, there are stories. They just likely are not the stories we want being told, okay? And then next, flexibility. So flexibility, you know, you have to think about this in terms of what your inherent constraints are with your company. You know, your constraints could limit your ability to be more flexible. But nevertheless, we'll need to take a look at what the opportunities are and strive to reach our most flexible potential as an employer. And this is important because people have a lot of options out there. There's a lot of opportunities in the market, and those opportunities, a lot of them are delivering on flexibility. Okay. And then finally, support. How supportive are we as a company? You know, where are our employees wrestling with life challenges that we could be more supportive with? And being more supportive could be as simple as connecting them with community resources. You know, in fact, we have CareerSource Suncoast. We have this platform called Crosswalk. You can add your company to Crosswalk so that if one of your employees needs to be connected to a community resource, you just open up the Crosswalk and you find whatever resource, whether it's housing, financial, you know, all these community-based organizations are in this Crosswalk, and you're able to refer people to those resources through that platform. So connecting your folks with resources that they need. And then, do we ask our employees what their hopes and dreams are, especially as it relates to their career? Are we actively working to help them achieve those things? And are we fostering a more than just a transactional relationship with employees? Those are the types of things that we should evaluate ourselves on as it's related to support. The next experience context that we're going to shift to is the onboarding experience. Now, recent Gallup study found that 12% of employees strongly agreed that their organization did a great job of onboarding new hires. 12%, right? You know, I think that's something that we often overlook sometimes as employers. We just kind of throw people in there and they'll figure it out, right? So The onboarding experience is something that we really need to focus on. It's a make or break for a lot of new hires. You spend all that money getting somebody on the team, and then you can lose them in a poor onboarding process. And so, when it comes to onboarding, it's more than learning policies and procedures. It's perhaps more importantly, it's about introducing the culture of the company and who we are and what we're about as a company. So what are the stories new employees are being told about our companies? And who do we have designated to be telling those stories? So how are we delivering a warm welcome introduction to our community, company community, and is it one with a high level of trust and safety? Next in onboarding, we have support. So when you bring on a new person, is that onboarding, does it make them feel alone and left alone to fend for themselves? And it's important, in addition to like that support piece, you want to be sure you build in a continuous improvement process that gathers feedback and gains insights that you can use to learn and adopt improved practices and processes. Every cohort of new employees is a learning and improvement cycle that we should take advantage of. When I started CareerSource Suncoast in 2009, there was no onboarding process. Some years later, we started surveying employees, and we found we wanted to find what were some of the pain points because retention rate had dipped, and so what we found is, and one of the biggest pain points was that our absence of a quality onboarding process. And so from that point on, we sought feedback from every cohort of new employees and now have a very good onboarding process. So every class of new employees, we asked them, how was onboarding? What could have made it better? Where did you feel unsupported, right? And so today we're getting high marks on onboarding, where at one point we didn't have a process, right? And you could be losing a lot of folks that way. The final context is the candidate experience, and in this case, so we want to make sure that the employee value proposition is effectively communicated in all of our job listings, in all of our advertisements. That is, if it's a good one, right? And we put a lot of time in this employee value proposition, a lot of time and resources in creating a winning mix for us for these. And so now we need to make sure that we are sharing those strengths to candidates out there in the market. How easy is it to apply for a job in your company? Is the application easy? Can it be completed on a mobile device? How many steps are involved? Is our application process creating too much friction for applicants? And then is it consumer grade? So what do you mean by consumer grade? Well, so we're all very used to buying stuff online, and you know how easy that is? People become accustomed to that level of easiness, right? If you have an application on your website that's old and using old technology and it's very cumbersome, people's expectations don't line up with that. They're just going to be like, oh, this is going to take too long, never mind. I'll move on to the next one, right? So ease of application. Process speed. How long does it take in your process from application submitted to interview scheduled to offer made? If it's too slow, you're going to lose people. They're going to already have another offer from somebody else and have accepted it, right? So process speed is really important. And then finally, responsiveness. How quickly are we responding to inquiries from questions from applicants? And we should keep in mind that if we tell someone no, that it's not a never. It's a not yet, not at this particular time, for this particular opportunity. We need to handle this communication in a timely and tactful manner. They could become a great candidate at some point. And so what we don't want to do is we don't want to lose their consideration in the future, okay? And so that communication is super important. And so ultimately, we need to determine if our 3 experience contexts differentiate us in the market. Do they differentiate us in a positive or negative way? And so we'll need to ask ourselves that and really take a hard look at that. I'll wrap up with these 4 main takeaways. Here are the 4 main takeaways for today. First, we have a tight, highly competitive labor market that we'll be living in for quite some time. And to compete in this market, we'll need to first focus on what employees want by developing attractive employee value propositions, then create high-quality employee experiences in 3 different experience contexts, and finally, use a continuous improvement process where we gather feedback to gain insights that we use to improve our policies, our processes, our culture, and become an employee of choice. So thank you for your time, and I hope you found this information helpful, and I look forward to some questions.
Out of curiosity, has any studies been done on AI and how AI has affected employees from both sides, whether it's taking jobs and taking from jobs, or from or adding value and being able to hire employees due to AI?
I haven't seen any studies. So the question was, have I seen any studies where AI has made an impact on hiring people, or how that's impacted the hiring process at all? And I haven't seen any studies yet, but I'm sure we'll see some here pretty soon. The things are accelerating fairly quickly at the moment. What I have heard, I've heard the question asked, will AI take jobs? And I think the best answer I've heard so far is that people who use AI will take the jobs of people who don't use AI. But I know I haven't heard any studies lately.
Hi, Josh.
Hi.
I was just wondering, which company have you seen or studied that has exemplified everything that you have talked about, and does it best? Who can we look at as a best practice? Don't tell me CareerSource.
Great question. So the question was, is there a company out there who exemplifies all 4 of these areas that I'm aware of? And I can't give you an example of any that hits it out of the park on all these. There is a book out there called Humanocracy, and that book is about creating the conditions where people can do their best work. And there are lots of examples given in that book of companies, like global companies, who have done a lot of what you're seeing here in terms of creating a place that is more designed for humans and what the desires are in the market today. So you could take a look at that book, Humanocracy, and I'm sure you can find some examples of some of the companies who have done some of these practices. Yeah. And I'll say, some companies will do really well in a couple of these categories. So, everybody has their own constraints they have to operate under. You just have to try to push as far up on each of those as you can get as a company. Some are going to be harder than others. If you're a manufacturer, flexibility is you're going to be low. So you're going to have to think about, okay, if I'm low in this area, I'm really going to be high in another area if I want to be competitive.
Talk about how the housing market is affecting the employee market.
Yeah, I think that's something I mentioned at the very beginning. So the question was, how's the housing market affecting the employment market? And so, you saw there on the graph that this is an older population, right? And so you have a lot of newer folks moving in who are retired, and then that puts pressure on the housing market, and then it's going to be cost prohibitive for labor force to move into this area who don't have the cash to come in here. So I think the pressures we do see on the labor market is that there are folks who will decide not to move here for a job because of the housing cost.
Josh, I've seen some statistics that suggest that there is a significant percentage of positions that either will or need to convert to a contract basis as opposed to an employee basis, partly probably to address this idea of flexibility in the workforce. Are there resources out there to help organizations look at which positions can they consider becoming more of a contract basis as opposed to an employee basis? I mean, you mentioned CareerSource can help with, a salary study locally, which is wonderful. You said it's a free service. But what about this idea? Are you seeing the same type of statistics that I've read about in this conversion of positions?
Yeah, no, I mean, I personally haven't seen it, but I would say if someone is considering that, a good place to start would be, the SHRAW, the local Human Resources Association. There's always great consultants and professionals in that space who could help you with some of those decisions. I think maybe the biggest barrier sometimes for a company who's making that decision is you first have to ask yourself, contract would be great. We should do that. But then they realize nobody wants to be a contract worker or for this position. So something you have to test in the market to see if something that might be a good idea from an employer perspective, but is it going to sell to the labor market, to the folks who are looking for work out on the market? So.
Hi, Josh. Great years at New College of Florida. I know CareerSource SunCoast has great partnerships with our educational partners, including New College. Curious to know what role can educational partners play in helping employers achieve better employee engagement and satisfaction?
Yeah, I mean, I think, thanks. So the question was, how can CareerSource educational partners help employers with making better policies, processes that are more attractive to employees? And I would say just to educate employers, right? So, a lot of times as employers, we get focused on what we're doing, and a lot of times we might not know what's going out in the market, and we look up and we have a hard time filling roles, and we're not really sure what's going on there. So just reaching out to these educational partners, because the educational partners have the labor force, right? And so even to get a better understanding of what those students who will soon be graduating, because that's going to be your next largest source of labor, right? Coming out, so with 3.2% unemployment, that's your next largest source of labor, are those who are graduating. Getting a better understanding of what those soon-to-be job-seeking folks want. Like, what do they want? What kind of environment do they want to work in? Because that's who you're competing for. So education providers can probably help you with that, especially inviting you in, having a conversation.
A friend of mine was telling me that she had applied for a job, and there were over 300 applicants for this particular job. Do you have any advice on how potential employees can make themselves look more competitive in that type of overwhelming applicant field?
Yeah, I think that's probably it's in a more way. I think it's some of the best things that a candidate can do is not get too stuck. Don't get stuck exclusively online, just submitting applications. Of course, you have to do that, right? But trying to make connections in the community with people and foster and develop relationships with people in the community, so that you're not just another application coming across a computer screen, or that maybe you're not being sorted out because of an algorithm, perhaps. So I would say try to make those connections in person, grow your network to set yourself apart. Right? And a lot of times, what you have on your resume, and you look at the job description and what's listed for the job, if your resume doesn't match that, that resume's not gonna make it. Right. Yes.
Since CareerSource is in the business of workforce development, and you're working with the employers of Manatee and Sarasota counties, if what you have just shown us is the cutting edge of how to actually take advantage of everything that the company has to show their employee value proposition, is there a thought of, hey, since we need to educate the employers to become more successful, is there a way that CareerSource can make what you have just explained to us some sort of a training or a workshop where employers can get more information and actually do hands-on so that we can actually have this within the different companies? Because we do know that information, but sometimes actually going in and doing that is not as easy as it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, for a lot of these, you could have, for all four of those areas, you could have a workshop on just on each of those, right? You could really dive into how do you really reach your most flexible potential as a company. It could be, things that you haven't even thought about doing, or when it comes to meaning, purpose, and belonging, have you ever spent any time about what is our company's story, and is it inspiring, and does it inspire people to be a part of that team? And this particular job in the company, it might be, I might want to go work at this company, but I want to do what in the company? Well, how does that contribute, right? So, yeah, I think we could do a workshop in a lot of these areas.
Can CareerSource start that?
Us, or I'm sure there's a community partner out there. There's someone in this community who can, yes, absolutely.
And I'm sorry, I am grilling Josh because I did work with CareerSource. So it's all familiar, and Josh probably knows that I love to ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Fantastic. And, we heard groans at the beginning with some of those statistics, but I think that while there are challenges, I also would encourage you all to leave today to look at this as an opportunity as well, right? We're part of the family of the Manatee Chamber. We're here to support the success of one another, and it's one of the reasons you all join the Chamber. It's to grow your network, to learn from one another. I certainly heard that we probably have another workshop or seminar series to start planning on a number of the great advice and insights that Josh shared with us today. So thank you all. Please leave here with this as an opportunity and not just something that we're all staring down saying, what in the world am I supposed to do about this? And I'll tell you one story that hits home as we're talking about all of this, and it comes from our chairman of the board. Many of you know that our chamber earned a very distinctive honor this past December in being named the Florida Chamber of the Year for the 5th time, which no other chamber in the state has done that. And that's not what gets the applause. The applause is when I called Jeff Podobnik, our incoming chair at the time, and shared with him the great news that our chamber, you all, as the chamber membership, were once again named the best chamber in the state. Jeff said, "That's awesome. Now, what are you doing for the team? You achieve levels of success, but this has to be a constant analysis and assessment about how you hone your strategies for an ever-changing environment." So it's a great reminder that we always can be looking inward on other ways to improve our systems and support our team. So Josh, thank you again so much. Thank you all for being here. Once again, we'll see the logos on screen of our annual headliner sponsors. If a sponsorship is ever something that you would like to add to the marketing and promotion mix for your company, you know where to find our chamber staff. Thank you so much to Manatee Educational Television. Charles and Richard are here today so that those who weren't able to join us will be able to access this information through the METV YouTube site. A couple of upcoming dates and events that might be of interest to you, and I'm getting a note. Oh, you have the clicker, so nothing's on screen. Okay. Awesome. So September 21st, we have a seminar focused on healthcare, health insurance options for small businesses. We know that this is a challenge, and as we talk about pay and benefits, certainly the ability of the smallest of businesses to offer healthcare coverage is something that we know companies can struggle with. So we've got a seminar coming up on that. On September 28th, we'll enjoy a coffee club networking event at Prime Urgent Healthcare at the Chamber's Lakewood Lakewood Ranch office. And then our next Headliners Luncheon is October 11th. We'll be at the Lakewood Ranch Golf and Country Club, and our speaker will be Carlos Bucaris, who is the Executive Director of Seaport Manatee. So if you want some fresh information about how incredibly important the seaport is as an economic driver in our region, Commissioner Bearden, thank you for your role as a commissioner for the port, as the Port Authority as well. Please don't miss that October 11th luncheon. It is really incredible, the amount of growth and opportunity that still exists and is on the horizon for our seaport. We're so lucky to have that in our community. So with that, I hope you all have a great afternoon. Thank you for being here. Josh, I'm sure, can stick around for a couple minutes if you'd like to know how CareerSource can help your company on some of the issues we talked about today. Make it a great day.